Hello everyone, it is Joe here from Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, including the stuff from Shining Fates, make sure you go ahead and check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using the code Omnipoke. For today's video, we are going over another Bronzong variant, this time moving away from the tanky Corviknight and more towards an aggressive AuroraBox based build. So the concept is that we're still going to be having that shell of Zacian and ADP, because Altered Creation GX is still extremely good, and Bronzong being able to move around those metal energies can be a way that we can protect ourselves around crushing hammers, and also means that if we don't get down the turn 1 ADP, but we do get the early Bronzor, we can then use, our early game attachments effectively to move them over to that ADP and get that turn 2 Altered Creation off, just like you would do with normal lists of ADP that are using energy switches. At the same time, these Aurora Energies enable us to tech in a ton of Pokemon, so we can be smacking things for weakness for big knockouts that would be out of range of Zacian. And also, thanks to Snivysaur being an option, we actually have additional Gust on top of the boss's orders that we play. So we have a ton of Pokemon on the screen now. Basically, bear in mind that the core concept is still going to be similar to most ADP early games, where you try and find ADP, you try and find Zacian. Sometimes you'll look for that Bronzor early. I think you still prioritize Zacian and ADP before anything else. But in situations where you can't find ADP, you essentially have 5 good outs now, because anytime you find a Bronzor, it means you don't need to find ADP turn 1, because you could then look for Bronzong and ADP turn 2 instead, which sounds difficult, but, you have Supporter as well as Dead Change at that point, not just, Dead Change alone, especially if you're the player going first, right? So, the Bronzor helps us out in our early game search. Zacian is still something that we want to play a high count of, because Intrepid Sword is still crazy, and we're playing quite a techie list, obviously, with the amount of one-of Pokemon that we're using in here, so just sort of getting extra card draw towards that is obviously very helpful. Brave Blade's still obviously a very good attack, it's just not getting through, every tag team out there, it's not getting through a few things, but Brave Blade certainly can still do a good number on a bunch of things, and you will weave in Brave Blade a ton, because we just have basic energies, a galore of metal, so that we can transfer them to all of these other Pokemon, which have colorless attack costs in them. That's the whole idea here. So usually Altered Creation GX is our main go-to. We do have the option to Tingly Return GX, and we do have the option to Solar Plant GX as well from Venusaur, which can do 50 to each of your opponent's Pokemon, which is actually pretty decent against like Mad Party and stuff like that. So some of the one prize matchups, which may seem like awkward on paper, I mean, ADP still can GX through them, and still that's very good. But also having like big spread options can be nice against a few other archetypes as well. So things to bear in mind just for early, like, strange situations where you can just deal with, like 2 teacups and a Bunnelby all in one go. They can be pretty much dead on their feet from that play. So, and it's not hard to get 3 energies into play just because of sources and metal transfer and that sort of thing. So that's amazing. However, that's not the main reason why Snivysaur is in here. It's mostly so that we can attach our Aurora Energies to Snivysaur as our active Pokemon, and then we can be Gusting, and then we can just play a switch out of Snivysaur. We also play Air Balloons. This does have a 3 energy retreat cost, but you can, transfer off the Aurora, move a metal up, use a balloon, pay retreat the 1, and then you have still sources that you can catch up with. So high switch count, as well as the Shining Vine for great synergy here to give us extra gusting options. And as we know with ADP, you want to have a ton of great gusting options, because anytime you can take a 3 prize knockout on Crobat or Dedenne or Eldegoss, these are all very welcome. So early aggressive gusting options with Snivysaur is excellent. You can even do it for slowing people down in those opening stages. If you get that Bronzong set up, you could just Shining Vine, switch into ADP, move that energy over, just to try and buy yourself turns against more aggressive archetypes. So that's also pretty cool. Forest Dump as well, gives us grass coverage, which can be okay for like Colossal if it's staying in the format as a fighting type, and a few other things that are weak to grass. And additionally, it's just a 270 hit point Pokemon, so whenever you're up against something that isn't a fire deck, it's quite tanky. So moving between ADP, shifting those energies over to Snivysaur as just a safe place for energies is sometimes nice, because Forest Dump does that 160, which jumps up to 190 post Altered Creation GX, so decent number there, as well as grass typing. Mostly here for the ability though, to be honest. The other V Pokemon that we play, Rhyperior, good type coverage against Pikarom, Eterna. It can also be energy disruptive, which is obviously very nice. Ninetales V, again, type coverage against Luke Metal, regular Zacian, Rusty Zacian, basically all of those. Also quite good against Rapid Strike Urshifu, because you can copy the sniping options, which can set up attackers for you, or multiple prizes, so that's also pretty cool. Milotic, obviously very good against Scentiscorch, also pretty good into Reshizard. Zamazenta in here to try and wall things like Eterna still, if it's in the format, or any other VMAXs out there. And Ditto is going to wrap that all nicely in a bow, where we can try and spam these in the right matchup, is kind of the deal here. Next up, we have the 3-2 line of Bronzong. We're obviously using Evolutionary Advantage, Bronzor, so that if we are going second, we can try and get that Bronzong online turn 1. Not really a priority. Like I say, you're still trying to go for the Ultra Creation early game. But when it comes online, it's going to enable all of these Pokemon very nicely. Even if it's not online, you can still just, if Ultimate Ray's on the table, you can just attach a bunch of Metal Energies to these V Pokemon, knowing that you're just one Aurora away from attacking with them as well, so something to bear in mind. Then we have a 2-1 line of Dedenne and Crobat to try and dig through the deck to hit some of these combo pieces. For the trainers, it's all very streamlined and simple, and that's because a lot of space has been dedicated on the previous slide to having tech Pokemon all over the place. So essentially our motto is just making sure that the trainers are all okay, to get the right Pokemon into the right situation is the main idea here. So outside of normal ADP, we've gone from Cherishables over to Comms for obvious reasons, as well as just maxing out the important copies of all the usual cards. For the supporters, it's still a pretty standard count. ADP normally plays a few less supporters, but we are, digging for more things more often, and we are allowed to dig with a Research or a Marnie in spots where ADP can't typically, because we can go hunting that Aurora Energy for the Snivysaur combo with Switch as well, or we could have done it pre-research, for example. So, a higher count than normal ADP-based decks in this regard, having lots of Marnies for potential disruption as well. You could think about digging into the Marnie count. We've seen ADP go as low as, like 1/2 counts. So this could be the potential spaces here. I always like to give you guys pretty easy baselines to get working off of, making sure that you're going to be drawing reasonably in those opening turns. We don't have the same, we don't have Eldegoss and a few other outs that you would typically have with ADP-zation. So that's why I'm padding out these counts just a little bit. And then we're going to be playing the 4 Aurora Energy, an all-star card, great for Snivysaur, obviously required for ADP. Absolutely important, especially for all of our V attacking Pokemon outside of Zacian and Zamazenta. And then 7 Metal Energy, which Bronzong can, of course, move around freely as well. And it's going to be sorcerable, swordable, so we can get more of these into play all at once, which is just fantastic. So the full list then, pause now if you'd like. It's also going to be in the description below. For tech options, Mew's definitely something I've thought about quite a lot, just because I do still feel like the Rapid Strike Urshifu may be an awkward matchup for this one. The reason why I got away with not playing Mew in the Corviknight build was because you were naturally playing the Goggles, which puts the Bronzong out of reach, and it means that even a Zigzagoon ping can't touch it because it's got the Goggles on. So Mew might be more important here to protect the Bronzong that little bit more. And just protect the Crobats and Dedennes and that sort of stuff. So Mew could be more important in this list than the previous Bronzong list that I showed. Eldegoss still always a decent option just for bull search outs and com outs to get yourself boss's orders and stuff like that, because this can still play conventionally like an ADP when it has to, right? There's also a couple other V Pokemon that you may think are quite strange on the surface, but actually can work out okay. Dragapult's Jet Assault would require 2 Aurora to be in play, but post-GX attack, this can knock out Urshi's, which is actually pretty nice if it's come into the active that turn. And Eternatus V can actually hit for weakness on Dragapult VMAX, which is a way that we can take a knockout with Dynamax Cannon. It's an expensive 4 energy attack cost, but it's one of the only ways we can actually deal with Dragapult all in one hit, which is actually, again, pretty cool. So you could be playing a basic Eternatus V in your deck and actually finally announce Dynamax Cannon. I'm not sure if anyone's actually announced that attack before in Pokemon, but it's possible now. The other thing I've really thought about is maybe, again, playing around with that support account. The 4 Marnie may seem a little high right now, and it is a flexible spot. Guzhala could be more situationally strong to give us extra access to Auroras, seeing as though they basically can be a Gus as long as we already have a switch enabled, or if we have enough energy to pay retreat out of Snivysaur with Air Balloon, with that Guzhala finding the Air Balloon for you straight away. It could also mean that you could play something like Cape of Toughness if you have one of these annoying Tech V Pokemon doing a lot of work in a certain matchup, putting a one-of Cape of Toughness in your deck, buffing that up to, 260, 270 sort of hit points, it then becomes a huge threat for your opponent and really awkward to deal with. So moving into a Guzhala package, even if it's a mini package with like one tag call, something like that, one Guzhala, one tag call, I can certainly see it being reasonable because just extra access to Aurora is oftentimes really, really important. Similarly, Malolana could be an additional switching out for you. It can be a nice way to heal some Pokemon as well. We're much more race-focused than the Corviknight build, so healing isn't a super high priority, but healing in general is strong against Urshifu that's trying to set up numbers all over the place. So it is something that you could bear in mind. Onto the matchup overview then. Decigoons is something that we don't have any text for. I'm sure you could find some Aurora-based attacking Pokemon that could deal good numbers into Decigoon. I'm not sure how many V Pokemon have good, attacks, like Shred-style attacks. Might be something I'll look into to actually get yourself over the line in that matchup, because it's quite sad trying to lose, well, just being not able to get through it with the amount of tech Pokemon that we play. So I'm sure there'll be comments below where someone's already found the answer. ADP Zacian as well, I think it's one of those things where we're trying to do similar things. We will most likely have to put down Dedennes and Crobats to get there because we just have more fluff in our deck in the mirror situation. So your opponent will probably have the easier Gust prizes. They're more streamlined at trying to get that GX boss game plan off. Now we do have Snivysaur to sort of offset that. We have a lot of Gust available to us, but at that same time we will be digging a lot more to filter some of the worst cards out of our deck as we go. So that's something to bear in mind. Rustization, I think, is quite aggressive tempo-wise. They can try and take a knockout on ADP. As soon as you've GX, you've lost a few energy then, and then it's down to you to accumulate sources and get back into the game. And if they're playing all of those turbo patches as well, it's going to be a Zacian V Zacian fight, and it's not always great for you either. Rapid Strike Urshifu, right now we're not playing Dragapult, we're not playing Mew. They could be cards that you insert into the deck to make that matchup stronger, depends on how popular you think that archetype will be. And Victini VMAX, it's awkward because Milotic's not a great answer. Post-GX attack, you need the full 4 energy to be doing 180 to one-shot into that Victini, so it's a little bit more expensive than it would be into the Center Scorch matchup, which just means that if the Victini is being early aggressive, they're bossing up your Zacians early. They can even boss up things like Bronzors early. Even though it's just one prize, it can force them into, or force your board into really awkward spots. So I think just the early gusting aggression the Victini boasts is quite awkward for you, as well as just natural type coverage as well. You don't feel too comfortable just leaving Zacians in the active, that sort of thing. So yeah, quite aggressive, low to the ground kind of deck that's kind of scary to come up against. So my closing thoughts are, Snivysaur is actually low-key one of the biggest payoffs of this sort of archetype. The type coverage is nice, but at the core, you're still ADP, and extra Gust for ADP is always a really nice big win for the deck, really. So having Snivysaur at your fingertips is one of the main benefits that I foresee this deck being able to take advantage of. I do think it does probably have a shakier early game, like I said, more reliant on Crobat and Dedenne, which is becoming more in the spotlight as not only ADP will continue to do well in the next format. I imagine that another deck that's going to capitalize on these easy Pokemon is going to be, of course, Rapid Strike Urshifu. So these are all things to bear in mind. Being forced to put these Pokemon into play because we are more setup based will come with its downsides. So let me know what you guys think about the Aurora Bronzong based build. Is there any other cards that you've thought about adding in as tech attacking Pokemon? What's going to be your answer to Decigoons? I'm sure there is one that I've just not quite thought about just yet, outside of just running them out of energy with like Rhyperior and Zamazenta and stuff like that. Yeah, I'll hear your thoughts down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video tomorrow. Cheers.